Story 1. If you are going to have a major agreement with someone involving money or housing, have it written and signed. Story 2. Don't ever change checkout lanes, no matter how fast the other one seems to be moving. It's just science. Story 3. Sometimes you break something so badly that it can never be fixed, and you will always be the one who broke it. Story 4. On the first day of first grade, the teacher held up the stapler and said, "This is not a toy." She passed the stapler around so everyone had a chance to hold it. As soon as I got it, I stapled my thumb. I can still feel the searing pain in my mind. Story 5. Sex is powerful enough for people to risk their careers, public reputations, relationships, and personal wealth. Story 6. I found out that ignoring warning signs always comes back to haunt you, significantly. Trust your instincts next time. Story 7. Use earplugs at concerts, especially if you want to stand up close. Start young. Exercise and food are medicine. Story 8. Crack is extremely powerful. Of course it is. It's a highly addictive substance. Then, after a couple of days, I realized that I had never known anyone who used to do crack. I sat in a bathtub for 3 days coming down from that. I will never do that again. I would not recommend trying it even once. It was as if the drug automatically pulled my mental focus toward it and held it. To this day, I feel like I dodged a very real bullet. It's the closest thing to literal mind control I have ever felt. Story 9. When I was young, I lost my temper over a parking spot at the mall. Person hit me in the jaw and knocked me down. I deserved it, and I occasionally thank him, like now. Story 10. Drugs can be enjoyable, but falling into addiction is far more insidious than one can imagine. Nothing good happens after 6 a.m., except if you are sober. Kinkiness can be enjoyable until we discuss mental health. Story 11. I found that a driving under the influence incident is very expensive and completely preventable. To avoid it in the future, after even one beer, I hang up the keys. To clarify, I had 1.5 beers and almost got broadside by a speeding police officer on a blind hill while pulling into Denny's at about 10 p.m. I was the designated driver, so I was taking it easy. I ended up blowing a .08. Story 12. I learned that once you're in the legal system, it is very difficult to escape if you continue to make poor choices. Story 13. Getting punched isn't like the movies. It doesn't just hurt. It resets your entire brain and body, and then it really hurts. Story 14. If you need help, seek it out. Doubling down and hoping to endure or that someone will notice you does not work. Story 15. Do not invest in a friendship or relationship with a sober former addict who still associates with the friends he used to use drugs with. Story 16. Suing individuals is very expensive and time-consuming. It is often not financially viable as an option. Even if you are completely in the right and have an admission of guilt in writing, and even if you are able to collect the judgment, it may not be worth the time, money, effort, or energy to pursue that course of action. Story 17. Diapers are expensive, so always use a quality one. The gamble of buying from a dollar store is just not worth it. Story 18. Just apologize. Readily accept apologies. Make your life easier. There are exceptions, but for the most part, apologize and accept apologies. Story 19. Don't mess around with explosives. This old man had a cigar box full of blasting caps. When July 4th rolled around, he decided to put on a show. As he was kneeling down to wire one, he fumbled it and it fell into the box, setting them all off at once right in his face. There wasn't much left of him. Story 20. If you think something is off while pregnant, just go in and get checked. Don't wait or feel embarrassed. Just go in and get seen. Story 21. If you're going to live fast, you're better off dying young because your body will make you wish you were dead starting at about 35. Story 22. Don't skimp on what separates you from the ground. Good shoes, good tires, a good bed, a good chair, and good knee pads are essential. I have worked in various jobs, including retail, flooring, and data entry. Inexpensive supports will come back to haunt you. Story 23. Pounding on a friend's window at night to scare them is not very funny and can result in breaking the glass and injuring your finger, requiring surgical repair. Yes, I had it coming. Story 24. You really need to take care of your teeth. The money I am spending and the pain I am experiencing have made that clear. Story 25. I filled out a disability accommodation form for my asthma, and my employer attempted to terminate my employment. I had to obtain a letter from my doctor stating that my asthma did not prevent me from performing my job before they would allow me to return to work. I was on unpaid leave until my doctor cleared me to work without restrictions. Story 26. If you have a child with someone who physically harms you while you are dating, the situation is unlikely to improve. Story 27. Keep drinking like it's no big deal, and you will become dependent on it, ending up in rehabilitation to break free from it. I experienced this, but it is not worth it. I have been sober for almost 7 years now. Story 28. Even if no one else can tell you are lying, lying to yourself will have the largest long-term consequences. Story 29. I do not have an innate sense of direction, and I will not stumble across a shortcut to my destination, especially if I am in a new location. This is a lesson I often wish I did not have to learn. Story 30. Always document everything and never trust people to keep their word. Those you think you can trust may let you down. Do not try to be cheap. Every time I have opted for the less expensive option, I end up spending more money in the end. Story 31. Climbing the corporate ladder is only important to you. The company does not care. In the end, you are just a number. Story 32. I pulled my 92-year-old grandfather's finger right after he asked me to pull it. I now have asthma. Story 33. At work, the squeaky wheel gets ignored. Additionally, coming up with new ideas for the company often leads to being fired rather than appreciated. Keep your head down and your mouth shut, and you will have better opportunities than those who constantly share good ideas. Story 34. Never tell your close friend about the problems in your marriage. Oh well, he is her concern now. Story 35. Everything in moderation, including moderation. Do not binge all weekend expecting to be sharp first thing on Monday, but also do not go on a diet. Instead, focus on improving your diet. Story 36. Sometimes, surgery to address a permanent life-affecting issue can lead to different permanent life-affecting problems. You may find yourself questioning whether it was worth it. Story 37. The 2 knee surgeries and lifelong aches and pains are not worth it if you can reach the top of a climbing rope. Story 38. People who experimented learned that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences can be quite intense. Story 39. Do not use a tree to show off your spinning back kick. You will break your tibia and fibula, requiring surgery and a month off work, which will be very costly. This is especially true if you live in a country with private healthcare. Story 40. You cannot change her. She might not corrupt you, but she certainly is not good for you, and you are still going to try anyway. Story 41. I experimented extensively with research chemicals and discovered that overloading the brain with random substances can lead to schizophrenia. It is not a pleasant experience. Story 42. Aside from romantic comedies, the person you meet on the first date is the best version you will ever see. Similarly, the person in the interview represents the best version of that employee you will encounter. Ultimately, over time, the real person emerges. Story 43. You are the side piece for a reason. No matter how much they talk about how miserable they are, how mean their spouse is, and how much they want to leave if only they could, and how wonderful, amazing, and attractive you are, they do not want you and will not leave for you. Story 44. If you tell the emergency room nurse, I feel like I'm dying, you are either scared or you should have a will already written. I also learned that Walter Reed offers excellent care. Story 45. Never leave off on a bad note with anyone. That might be the very last interaction you will ever have, and never forget how fragile life is. People are battling struggles you don't even know about. Even if you think you understand, never assume you do. Story 46. You don't have to be nice to everyone. I spent too long doing that. Don't tolerate people who don't treat you well. If you have to tolerate someone in a position of power over you, do so only to a certain degree. If they cross that line and are disrespectful, walk away. Story 47. Don't be reckless. Wear the back brace, goggles, knee pads, eye protection, and gloves. Trying to look cool and performing dangerous stunts might entertain onlookers for a few minutes. But trust me, when things go wrong, very wrong, you won't have anyone around to entertain you during your months of recovery in the hospital or rehabilitation. Story 48. You know that substance they put in pools to eliminate every living microorganism so the pools remain clean? Well, in biology class at school, I went to water some plants that I was using for an experiment, but I couldn't find any water. I noticed a jar of something that looked a lot like water, but it was not water. So I decided to open it and take a big sniff, because I wasn't sure what it was. I wanted to confirm it was just water. I swear every single nose hair got singed off, and I immediately felt like my nose was melting. If you couldn't tell, the bottle of mysterious liquid was indeed the substance they used to sterilize public pools. Story 49. Trying to get your car to reach 100 miles per hour before a certain bridge on a back road was exhilarating until the deer jumped out of the bushes. Story 50. If you are rude to a driver on the road with words or actions, you will likely encounter them at the next red light. If this happens, be mature and roll down your window to accept the verbal response that may follow. Story 51. People aren't always what they seem, and frankly, they can be disappointing at times. I discovered that I should have taken things more seriously. Story 52. Companies, like IBM, will take advantage of you, demanding more while giving less in return. It wasn't until I was laid off and joined another company that I discovered life was better outside of the corporate environment. Story 53. Just because the lamp is off doesn't mean there isn't electricity in the cord. I cut one with a razor blade as a child and burned a hole through it, which caused my thumbnail to come off. I cauterized it as well. My dad just laughed and decided that was enough of a lesson, then taught me how to rewire electronics. Story 54. Never bail anyone out of jail, even if they are family. I once spoke to a man in a retail store who bailed out his brother, who later refused to pay him back because he suspected his brother was an informant who bailed him out to gather more information. Just avoid it. It may work out for some, but my acquaintance decided after 90 days to tell me that I had forgotten he had already repaid me. When I told him that was absurd, he claimed that I enjoyed inappropriate behavior related to my son. It only got worse from there. No, I did not get repaid. However, if you find yourself in that situation, simply revoke their bail. You will need to hire a bail enforcement agent, and they will take the person back to jail. Remember, if you paid the bail, you are responsible. Story 55. My brother, 2 friends, and I built a trebuchet for fun in the swamp by our neighborhood using various trees, vines, and a chain we found. It took us 3 days in the 98-degree southern swamp heat, knee-deep in mud and surrounded by horseflies, and involved a lot of heavy lifting for 15-year-olds. We knew how to build it, but didn't think about the tension, weight, or any other considerations of safety, let alone where we were aiming or how far our projectile would possibly fly. We just wanted a trebuchet. Finally, we were ready, lined up to launch a stump in a direction we hadn't planned for, and all clustered around to see it fire. I don't really remember the moment it fired, just that there was a sense of motion, a huge thump you could feel in your chest, and then I found myself in the creek 10 feet away from where I started. Thankfully, it wasn't deep and I didn't drown. My brother, who had pulled the cord, was launched into a nearby tree when he held on in shock. He was coated in splinters and had some severe rope burn. Our 2 friends had been knocked down together and were completely covered in mud and bruised from where the wood had exploded, as was I, but we were otherwise fine. We never found the stump we had used for ammunition. Don't mess around with medieval artillery. It works as advertised if you build it right, and if you don't, you'll find out. Story 56. I was 9 years old at the local park playing basketball on the kids' hoop with my friends from the other side of the park. Their older brothers were always playing on the full courts with the rest of the neighborhood and anyone who came from further away. They had a speaker playing music, and when a song containing an offensive term came on, I didn't know any better and said the word. The older kids punished me by making me climb a series of buildings for the after-school programs and left me on top of a mobile classroom for about 3 hours. They didn't help me down. They just brought me a ladder and walked away to play again. I've never used that term since then and always feel uncomfortable when I hear others say it. Story 57. If a friend offers you a cookie and says it contains marijuana, advising you to just eat half, then you should just eat half. If an hour later you don't feel anything, do not assume that it's a regular cookie and that your friend is joking, and certainly do not eat the other half. However, if you decide your friend is joking and eat the whole cookie, when you start to feel the effects from that amount of THC consumed in one sitting, do not play Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon in an attempt to relax. Story 58. If you discover that an old friend is now a sex offender, it is advisable to steer clear. They are not the person you remember. Story 59. It was amazing. I was hyper-focused, cleaned my room, did my homework, and was an upstanding citizen. However, getting clean was a nightmare. The come down was intense, and even after being clean for over 9 years, I still sometimes smell it and my brain reacts for a moment. It turns out I had undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder as well. Now I'm prescribed a non-stimulant medication to help me. I learned my lesson and will never touch that substance again. Story 60. I participated in a politics discussion and expressed something like, "Looks like somebody is about to find out," which led to my ban. I even messaged them 6 months later to appeal the decision. I discovered that the moderators there are quite unreasonable. As the concept of find out is prevalent everywhere at this point, I accept the ban. Story 61. I got into a scuffle on the sidewalk after bumping shoulders with a random guy near my house. Neither of us wanted to back down, so fists started flying. He grappled with me, attempting to throw me to the ground, but I sprawled out when he grabbed me. Next, he stomped on my feet while I was wearing flip-flops and grabbed onto my private parts, tugging so hard that I thought he would rip them off. After about 30 seconds to a minute of him pulling at my genitals, I begged him to let go. We eventually agreed that the fight was over and went our separate ways. The lesson I learned that day is you never know how far someone is willing to go. Story 62. You likely shouldn't take a cheater back, considering that they willingly endangered your health. Story 63. Not only are drugs harmful, but the environment surrounding them is also detrimental. Additionally, the individuals involved with drugs, especially those who are not just addicts, can have a negative impact as well. Story 64. I don't mix well with men. My father taught me to think like a boy while growing up. As a result, I have a strong ego and I don't appreciate unsolicited advice or being told what to do. I can be loud and aggressive when I'm angry, and it seems that many men do not appreciate these traits in a woman. I learned that it might be best for me to keep to myself. Story 65. Sometimes the consequences are not getting caught and facing trouble. Sometimes the consequence is having to live with what you got away with because nothing stopped you from escalating. Story 66. Men don't like good women. They like happy women. Don't lose yourself while loving someone else. Story 67. Alcohol is the most insidious drug, and we should regulate it more than any other substance. Story 68. Your health is more important than a degree. Learn to enjoy solitude, or you will be miserable. People move on, and there is nothing you can do about it. Embrace life while you can. Time moves faster than you think, and many people are conservative in their choices. You may regret not experiencing more. Story 69. Sometimes you have to become the follower to someone else's leader, or they will just continue to make things worse. Story 70. As a young child, I thought the elephant ears plant looked appealing. If you are curious, it tastes like celery, and even a small nibble will make your mouth itch like nothing you have ever experienced before. Story 71. Don't go to a chiropractor. Despite constant warnings not to let these people manipulate your neck, I went and had 2 strokes. Story 72. Working on my PhD is only fun to say in theory. In reality, it is a nightmare and the biggest financial mistake I have ever made. Story 73. Don't give your job everything you have. I was raised to be a workaholic. Companies do not care about who you are. The more you do, the more they expect. They will expect without respect. Do what you are hired to do. Say no sometimes. Don't be the all-star, especially in corporate jobs. Story 74. I interacted with a peculiar individual who resembles the missing fifth member of the 1968 Creedence Clearwater Revival and found a husband. Story 75. Your joints do not recover the same way after turning 25. Be cautious and avoid engaging in any physically challenging activities while intoxicated. Story 76. A good discipline can be worthwhile at times when someone behaves inappropriately, but do not let anyone take your phone. A broken phone is painful, especially when transferring all that data. Story 77. Your body doesn't care how you think or feel. It is better to take care of it when you are young and avoid activities such as running marathons or lifting heavy weights. Story 78. You can eat too many magic mushrooms and spend the next week contemplating consciousness and what makes up your inner self. Story 79. Wasting a majority of your money on cannabis and alcohol will lead to multiple financial problems in the future. I wish my college self had known that at the time. Story 80. You will get caught. The aftermath is awful. It is not worth it by any means. Stay faithful or leave. Don't fail. You won't like what you find. Story 81. Don't climb on rooftops with people you just met to do drugs. The police saw us get on the roof and they followed. We were very lucky not to get caught with the drugs and fortunate that the business owner did not press charges. I felt bad for the fire department that had been called because the police stated that we had no way down, even though there was a ladder and a staircase. I don't do drugs anymore, but if you do, avoid doing it on a rooftop or in a place where someone might catch you. Story 82. I attempted to clear the entire pyramid at the skate park, landed in the transition, and broke my wrist in 3 places. I realized I am much more capable in my mind than I actually am. I missed 3 months of work and underwent 3 surgeries. Story 83. Alcohol is always enjoyable at first. It's completely socially acceptable. However, if you're not careful, it can lead you to a very dark place. Story 84. In grade 4, around 1990, nurses came to the school for eye and ear checks. I played around by pretending I couldn't hear most of the sounds during the ear test and pretending I couldn't see most of the letters during the eye test. 9-year-old me discovered that due to some issues with my hearing, it was determined that my tonsils were too large and blocking my ear canals, so I had to have them removed. I had surgery, got an infection in my throat, and one nurse called me difficult because I couldn't swallow my medicine. It was quite a mess. The eye test indicated that I should have had glasses since I was 4, so I had to wear oversized glasses for about a year, which caused me severe headaches and led to other health issues. My mother faced financial difficulties every time I lost my glasses. I was already so deep into it and didn't want to get in trouble by coming clean, so I just dealt with all the consequences. Other than being a teenage parent, that's the only time I can remember things going that badly and turning into a disaster. Story 85. I had been doing my senior internship at university before graduation, and I had to submit a reflection paper every day by the end of each week. I thought if I skipped a few days because it was my birthday and I was sick, it would be fine. Little did I know, I received an email saying that I would fail if I did not complete an extra week to compensate for the days I missed. Also, yes, I made up my reflections for the days I missed. Not too terrible, though. Story 86. Anyone can talk, but talk means nothing. When someone shows you who they are, believe their actions over their words, always. Story 87. No condoms cost more than using condoms. How much? 18 years times 52 weeks times 50% of your paycheck. Story 88. Cryptocurrency and stock trading are challenging. They require patience, strong will, resilience, knowledge, and time for daily and ongoing analysis. Investing in the S&P 500 and holding for 30 years is demanding but has been proven to yield returns. This approach requires only patience and consistency. Story 89. My boyfriend and I always say we explored and discovered. We were both not in the mindset for commitment. We met on an app for people who practice ethical non-monogamy and kink, and he was dating someone else in an open relationship. I was about to turn 40 and had experienced another failed relationship and a miscarriage earlier that year. I decided to open up to the idea of not getting married and letting go of not having children. It's honestly the best relationship I've ever had. Monogamous, yes, but super passionate and honest. It's pretty much the only experience that makes me smile. So when I saw this prompt, I had to share. Story 90. If you are included in the in club at work and are interacting with management, always agree with them and do not try to make things fair. It may seem unfair, but remaining silent can get you further. Story 91. I am divine, as are you. We share the same consciousness. We never die, and we engage in this earthly existence to alleviate the monotony of eternal purgatory. It is challenging. Story 92. I met a young man last night who decided to arm wrestle a larger opponent. The larger opponent then broke his humerus. After the injury, he took him to the hospital and took a picture of the injured man in the hospital bed, posting it on social media with the caption, "Mess around and find out." The man with the broken arm was not happy about this at all, but he couldn't do anything because of his injury. Story 93. If you shoot the king, make sure he is dead. I am older and wiser. I rarely choose to shoot now, and I ensure the target is very dead. Story 94. If a man hesitates when you ask him if he is married, then he is married. However, a large percentage of men can easily lie about not being married. Story 95. Getting tagged by an electrified cattle fence feels like being kicked in the stomach by a large horse. I did get my $20, though. Story 96. Teenage me. Word will get out through pillow talk or girl code every time. I remember getting flamed on Twitter one time by half the girls at my school for cheating on my girlfriend at a party. Story 97. Me to my friend, sometime in the late 1970s. I wonder what would happen if, instead of just pouring pool chlorine and brake fluid onto the ground together, we poured them into a Rosella sauce bottle and screwed the lid on tightly? Story 98. Robbing people was not for me. You only have to shoot at me once. I'm just going to work like everybody else. Story 99. Never report a large financial firm to the Securities and Exchange Commission. You may face serious consequences, and the employees of the Securities and Exchange Commission may not take action as they benefit from the situation. Story 100. I dated someone I met at rehabilitation. It didn't end well. I am still sober, but that relationship was a whirlwind of drama, mental illness, manipulation, and lying, with crack being smoked in my apartment. I drank light beer while he smoked crack rocks. What did I get myself into? Anyway, it ended terribly with physical violence. Story 101. I danced at raves for 20 years and had a great time, but no one told me about bursitis. Story 102. Addictions are not just about partying all the time. The slower burning ones can cause much deeper damage when they finally surface. Don't be afraid to ask for help, even if you don't feel it's that bad. Story 103. Road rage is a serious issue. I once got really angry at a driver and honked a few times. He chased me into a parking lot and then drove in the opposite direction straight at me. I feared for my life and thought, this is why people say it isn't worth it. I drove fast and escaped, and the driver eventually drove off. I was lucky. Story 104. If you leave one person for another, the second person will, in turn, leave you. This helpful rhyme makes it easier to remember. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.